Kadosh, Beruchim Aba'im to everybody. Today, Thursday, the 7th day of Tammuz, corresponding to the 17th of June. Today's class, graciously sponsored by our dear member, Mr. Ike Hillary and family, as a prayer to Hashem to send a good shidduch for his grandson, Ishak ben Devora, also known as Ike J. ben Devora. May Hashem send them a kala na'ava hasuda, a suitable wife, Be'ezat Hashem, to build a bayit ne'eman be'Israel on the foundations of Torah, Mitzvot, and Ma'asim Tovim. Amen. So we discuss in the Gemara of today different areas of halakha, and we touched many different topics, from the topic of honoring parents to the topic of saving lives to the topic of longevity and a good life. So the Gemara begins, Tana de be Rabbi Yaakov, en lecha kol mizvah o mizvah sheba Torah besida, shematan secharam ben sida, she'en teluyat hametim teluya ba. It says as follows. The Torah doesn't give us rewards for our mitzvot. Let's say you are learning Torah now, or you just finished saying a beracha for a coffee or a tea. How many points did you earn for that mitzvah? We don't know. You go to school, you take a test, they tell you this test equals 10% of your grade, the final equals 20% of your grades, performance, attendance on time, another 10%. So more or less, we are able to have some idea of a number. But let's say, thank you so much. But let's say a person said a beracha. What is the reward for a beracha? I don't know. I do know that American Airlines or El Al to Israel, right, is a 6,000 mile trip. But when it comes to mitzvot, I don't know the numbers. In the entire Torah, there are two commandments that the Torah actually gives us the reward. Two extreme mitzvot. One mitzvah is the mitzvah of honoring parents. Kivud av ba'em. Kaved et avicha ve'et imecha le'man yarichuni yamecha. The blessing of longevity. That is a written dividend for the mitzvah of honoring parents. And we all know very well that the mitzvah of honoring parents is perhaps one of the most difficult mitzvot of the Torah to fulfill them properly. Honoring your father or mother is not only standing up when they come into the room, okay? We just did for our Kohen Gadol coming in, Baruch Haba. Make room, please, Kohen Junior. Put the chair in front of me. No, he יושב פה, זה המקום קבוע שלו. ששמח, כן. Buenos días.
Estuve hablando con el rabino de Chile.
Nice, Rabbi. Unbelievable.
Los amigos míos más cercanos desde niños.
Nice.
Viven allá,
Baruch Hashem. Yes. Anyways, so one of the way to honor your father or mother, they come into the room, you stand up. Another one, you don't raise your voice towards them. Another one, you feed them, you dress them, you take care of them. Whatever is necessary to do, each one does according to the means and capacities. The Puede Yoes writes that the mitzvah of Kibud Abaim has two parts. When they are alive and when they are not alive. When they are alive, we have a lot of physical actions and monetary actions and verbal actions that gives us the kavod. But when a father or mother has v'shalom, they are gone from the world, says the Puede Yoes, the only language that the neshama understands is the language of ruhaniyut. Ruhaniyut means spirituality. That's why you give charity in their memory. You light a candle in their memory. You say Kaddish in their memory. All these things that we do is Le'ilui Nishmat, to elevate the Neshama. Why to elevate? Because we really don't know what exactly happens to the Neshama after they leave the physical world. I mean, we know the theory, but how long does the Neshama goes through judgment, and how soon the Neshama goes in Gan Eden, how long the Neshama needs to go through a cleansing process. The Pasuk says, Ain lo ra'ata. No human being that has been alive can tell you what exactly happens. Only the Neshama understands. So we understand the before and after. Afterlife, that's why in Judaism, we believe in the afterlife. What does it mean, afterlife? Not only reincarnation, that the spirit of the person really doesn't die. The memory remains alive. The body is the one that goes into rest. But as the Mefarshim say, until when? Atidim ametim le'achayot. It says one of our principles of emunah, besides believing in Mashiach's arrival, is what? Tehiyat hametim. Baruch atah Hashem mehaye hametim. We say this 3 times a day. But actually, before the beracha, we say mehaye metim ata. Rabbi Yoshia morid atal. Mechalkel hayim behesed mehaye metim berachamim rabim. So in a short period of time, I said 3 times the topic of belief in resurrection. To what aspect of life resurrection will come? The Gemara explains, Leyom shekulo tov. What does it mean? The world is a complicated place, but nobody is escaping the physical world, God forbid. So despite all the challenges and the nisyonot and the setbacks and situations that we are in the world, how much people will be willing to leave? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. But it says that when the true essence of the reward for the person will be truly revealed by HaKadosh Baruch Hu later on in life. So you know what we deducted in the class? Same Gemara before. Sechar, the Gemara says it, Sechar behai alma leka. Let's say today we prayed with the minyan, and you listen to the Sefer, and Birkat Kohanim, and Amen, and Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo, and you did non-stop mitzvot in an hour's time or less. How many points did you earn for that? I don't know. Nobody knows. But the Gemara says a hidush, that whatever good deed the person does, we are not collecting the dividends. So means, hold on, if that's the case, so a person has a roof over the head, a person has family, a person has livelihood, a person has money, etc. Where is that coming from? Besides the Hesed of Hashem, there is something called Zechut Avot. What does it mean in Zechut Avot? The benefit or the merit of our fathers. Let's say my father received the beracha from his father, and my beracha goes to my children, and my children to their children. So we are riding in somebody else's credit line, which is fine, with the exception of 2 mitzvot. There are actually 4 mitzvot. There are 2 mitzvot that the return is guaranteed, and the return is connected to money. For example, ma'aser. A person that gives ma'aser, 10% of the net income. 10% is the minimum. 20% is the ideal. But let's settle for the minimum requirement, 10%. The Torah says, aser te'aser. The Gemara writes, aser bishvil shetitasher. There is a pasuk in the Torah that says, Lo tenasun et Hashem Elokechem. Don't challenge God. In other words, you cannot say, God, I came to pray in the morning. What are you going to do for me? Can you imagine? So the pasuk says, "Lo tenasun." Do what you need to do, and God will do what He needs to do. But there is one exception: giving maaser. Ubhanuni na bezot. The Navi Malachi says, "Please," God says, "test me with this commandment. If I'm not going to shower you with blessings, be'arikoti lachem beracha ad beli dai, I will shower you with blessings without end. But in order for that to happen, the person must make the keli. That keli is called maaser." Another mitzvah. This comes from the Rambam, that it says that for giving charity, the person will not become poor. In other words, not because we give, we have less. The opposite. That opens the door for more berachot. So we have two mitzvot that we discuss, and two mitzvot that we started to discuss. One mitzvah, honoring parents. How easy is the mitzvah of honoring parents? Is an easy mitzvah to do or no? What about you, Junior? Of course not, right?
Why is it not easy?
Because the Yetzer Hara tells you, "I'll do it later, Mom, don't bother me. You don't let me do anything." You raise your voice, you contradict them, you don't stand up when they come in.
When you're a kid.
When you're a child. But by the way, when you're an adult, the mitzvah of kibud abayim doesn't change. The opposite. There are more responsibility,
Yeah.
right? There are more responsibilities when you're an adult than when you're a child. And that's why the Gemara says, ma'achilo, malbisho, etc. You dress your parents. What's the meaning you dress your parents? Yani if they are in a situation or in a physical condition that they need your help, you do what you can.
Yeah.
Now, let's go to another mitzvah, which has nothing to do with honoring parents. The mitzvah of Shiluah Hakem. I'm sure you heard of this mitzvah. When you find a nest and the mother bird is there, you have to send the mother away, and then you take the eggs. Interesting enough. Okay, and that's what we don't understand. These two mitzvot, they seem to be an extreme. Mitzvah of honoring parents is a mega super commandment. The mitzvah of sending away the mother bird, how many times did you do that mitzvah in your life?
Never.
I did it twice.
Okay.
Yes. The last time I did it with our good friend here sitting to my right in Target in Aventura. I got a phone call 10 o'clock at night. Rabbi, there is a nest outside of Target. Remember that? 10 o'clock at night.
Okay.
I said, okay, I'll be there. We came, I brought the ladder, because you have to send away the mother bird. I was in public property, so Target allowed us to do it. And we did it. In many New York papers, they put an ad. If you're looking to fulfill this mitzvah, call this number. And they tell you where you can find this mitzvah. Now, what is the reward of the mitzvah? The Gemara says, the same reward as honoring parents. Does it make sense to you? It doesn't make sense to anybody. But guess what? As we learned yesterday,
Doesn't have to make sense.
doesn't have to make sense. This is part of our emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Gemara tells a story that a fellow, his father told him, do me a favor, take the ladder, go on top of the rooftop, and fulfill the mitzvah of Shiluah Hakem. The Gemara says when he came down the ladder, he tripped, he fell, and chalas. That means he died. So as the Gemara, hold on a minute. Hechan arichut yamim shel zeh. I have now two commandments. The father said to the son, go on top and fulfill the mitzvah of Shiluah Hakem. So what happened? What did he do? Did he listen to his father? Did he listen to his father? So if he listened to the father, and had Arich Yamim, that's one mitzvah. If he sends away the Shiluach HaKen mitzvah, that's another Arichut Yamim. So how come that he did two mitzvot connected to Arichut Yamim and he died on the way down?
Does it apply to the egel also with the mother?
Repeat it again.
Does it apply to the egel with the mother that you, before you take the egel, you have to get the cow out?
Okay, that is the conclusion of the Gemara. But we need to understand how to answer. I don't understand your question, so I'll listen to it in a few moments. So the Gemara says, hold on a minute. Let's think. استنى شوية. يجي الساب يوم سالي النبي. It's 9 months of pregnancy until conceiving and birth. So it says, hold on a minute. Dilma meharher ba'avira haba. Maybe this fellow, when he was doing the mitzvah or coming down, he thought to commit a transgression. And maybe the thought of committing a transgression activated judgment. The Gemara says no. Why? Because we have a kelal. Mahashava ra'a en HaKadosh Baruch Hu mesarefa lema'aseh. If a person has the intention of committing an avon, that thought doesn't get tabulated as a sin until the sin was actually committed. Let's say that a person says, okay, I'm going to wait till the rabbi finishes in a few minutes so I can go to the beach. Has v'shalom, right? Kosher beach is okay. Non kosher beach, no. But let's say the person is thinking of doing an avon. Shamayim says, we wait till the action actually happens. Why? Maybe the person is meharer b'tshuva. Maybe the person has a change of heart. The opposite is different. Let's say that a person wants to do a mitzvah. You left your office, let's say, to come for mincha and arvit. You left on time, and suddenly traffic hits. Unexpected, because usually there is no traffic. By the time you arrive, mincha and arvit was finished. In that case, the Gemara writes, mahashava tova mistarefa lema'aseh. If a person had the intention of doing something good, and for reasons beyond their control, they would not be able to do it, nevertheless, Hashem says, I know your intentions, and therefore, I'll calculate it like a mitzvah. So then, what happens? Answers the Gemara, no. There is one exception, that a certain thought can be considered a sin. For example, avodah zara. If a person, God forbid, has a thought of idolatry, a thought, not an action. Action is after the thought. First comes the mahashava, then comes the ma'aseh. The Gemara writes, meharher ba'avodah zara hava. This person perhaps was mocking the mitzvot. He listened to his father because intellectually makes sense to honor your parents. Remember the goy known as Dama ben Netina in the Gemara from Ashkelon? He was a Gentile, and his father had in his possession one of the 12 stones of the Kohen Gadol, right? And the Hachamim came to purchase this stone from him. And what did he say to them? My father's is sleeping now, and the key of the safe is under his pillow, and therefore I am not going to wake him up. So Goim understands, the world understands, that honoring parents is the proper type of behavior. But the other mitzvah of sending away the mother bird, what type of mitzvah is it? Answers the Gemara, the concept of avodah zara, neither. Ela sechar behayal maleka. The Gemara concludes to a certain extent, and it says that all the rewards of all of our mitzvot that we do, what we get now in life is only a sample of what the true reward we are entitled to receive. Is actually a Mishnah that we say every day in our morning prayers. Elu devarim she'en lahem shi'ur in the korbanot. And then we have a list of mitzvot that there is double reward. Perot and keren kayemet. Perot means the dividends. Keren kayemet means the main capital. באלו מצוות שאדם עושה אותם, אוכל מפירותיהם בעולם הזה, והקרן קיימת לעולם הבא. These are the following mitzvot that a person does. Part of reward is given here, but the real deal is after. Mitzvah number 1 on the list, kivud av ba'em. Is in your siddur. Yeah. Open your siddur. No, let's start. כיבוד הבאים וביקור חולים בהכנסת אורחים בהשכמת בית הכנסת בהבאת שלום בין אדם לחברו ובין איש לאשתו בתלמוד תורה כנגד כולם. Translation: honoring parents, welcoming guests, visiting the sick, coming to the synagogue to pray regularly, making peace between husband and wife and between people. All these mitzvot, automatically you get a bonus round. How many times you get a credit card?
Yeah, but the biggest of all?
And Torah is ultimate. I'm going to get there in a minute. But let's say you get a credit card and they give you guidelines. If you use it for gasoline, it's 1.5%. If you use it for airline tickets, it's 3 points. Let's say if you use JetBlue MasterCard to buy an airline ticket of JetBlue, you get 6 points. It's an unbelievable reward. Sure, you pay the credit card bill, but automatically you get the points. Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol. That's basically what this Mishnah is telling us. There are dividends for this particular mitzvot, but at the end of the Mishnah says, Betalmud Torah keneged kulam. It says the ultimate reward and sechar and simcha and nahat and everything else that comes through life, it comes through the aspect of Torah learning. That doesn't mean that you're going to do only Torah and no mitzvot, because that is not God's master plan. But as I quoted in the class before, there is a time to learn, there is a time to do mitzvot. But if every time you're going to sit down to learn, you're going to say, oh, I have a mitzvah to do, I have to visit somebody in the hospital. Do you know him? No, so where are you going? Especially nowadays. No, I heard there is a milah in a synagogue in Hollywood. And what are you going for? Do you know him? No, but I heard it's a sekulah to eat from the sa'udah of the Berit Milah. But what about the learning? No, but I have the mitzvah of Berit Milah. Even to cancel learning when a mitzvah must be made, that is only on very rare occasions. For example, if you have to pray with a minyan. Let's say that we are learning now, right? And somebody says, you know what? I'm going to pray later instead of praying with a minyan so I can learn Torah. That's not the proper way. There is a time for learn, and that's what the pasuk says. There is a time to serve God, and that's the meaning of the verse. The moment of serving God, close the book. Because serving God is the purpose of the book, the Torah. But without the Torah, what does it mean serving God? You know, for the Gentile world, honoring parents could be the concept of celebrating Mother's Day. For the Jewish people, there is no such a concept of Mother's Day, by the way. Because Mother's Day is every day.
Every day.
You understand? Sure, it's good for marketing and for flowers and chocolates and gifts. But for the economy, Mother's Day is a good day. I think Father's Day is coming up, right? Sunday.
This Sunday?
Okay, Hazako Baruch. Me neither. Okay? Yeah, of course, a phone call, 100%. Now, the Gemara goes even further, and it says, hold on a minute. Ve'amar Rabbi Elazar, shelochei mizvah enan nizokin. You telling me now that the reward that you're talking about is after, but the fact that he went to do a mizvah, how come that he died? If we have a rule from the Talmud that says, when a person is on a mission to fulfill a mitzvah, the zechut of the mitzvah protects the person. And says the Gemara, behazaratan shane. The Gemara says perhaps the protection is, the insurance policy is, as long as you're fulfilling the mitzvah. Once the mitzvah was done, that insurance policy expires. And says the Gemara, la. Ve'amar Rabbi Elazar, sheluchei mitzvah enan nizokin, lo bahalichatan, ve'lo bahaziratan. The performance of a mitzvah has an insurance policy that covers you both ways, when you go and when you come back. And that is the reason why many times when people travel, what they do, they give you shaliach mitzvah. What they give you? They give you $2, one to put there, one to put back. So this way, thank you, you have the zechut of the mitzvah. Answers the Gemara, sulam ra'ua have ubemakom de kavua hezeka shane. The Gemara says, you want to know why the reason why this guy fall? Because he used a broken ladder. And when you're dealing with danger, you can rely on miracles. In other words, you cannot say, you know what, I'm going to take a flight from, let's say, JFK to Fort Lauderdale, and I'm going to land an hour before Shabbat, and I'm going to have an Uber waiting for me to pick me up, and I'm going to make it on time to the synagogue right before Mincha. You know what we say in that? We say Hasid Shoteh. That's asur to do such a thing. Why? Because first of all, you should not really travel after midday on Friday. And especially today, airline traveling, regretfully, it's surrounded by delays, by fiascos on the plane, people refusing to wear masks. The other day, Southwest Airlines, right? 2 days not being able to fly. Why? Computer crash. Something happened to the computer system. They grounded all the flights. Don't ask me how many thousands in 48 hours. Can you imagine? Haz v'shalom. So to take a chance to fly relying on a miracle, or like you will say, instead of leaving 20 minutes from your office to make it on time for tefillah, you say, I'm going to leave 5 minutes before. I'm going to speed through the driveway, to the highway. I'm going to drive through the shoulder, and the police is not going to cut me, and I'm not going to get a ticket. That's also wrong. En somchim alanes. The Gemara writes, you cannot rely on miracles. Sure, there are miracles. I'll tell you a story. Remember the rabbi told us the story yesterday that the mother had an accident, I think, the same day that they were scheduled to fly back. Remember that story yesterday? Correct? And Min HaShamayim, the flight that they were supposed to be on crashed in the middle of the flight. Haz v'shalom, we're going back almost 30 years. So I'm going to tell you also another story of a crash, airplane crash, God forbid. This is about, and I know this firsthand because I know the rabbi that this happened to. A rabbi which is a shaliach bedin. This story goes back maybe 1990, 91. Google search afterwards where I'm going to tell you the story of the airplane, and it's going to give you more or less when it happened. So this rabbi is a Shaliach Bedin. He was a messenger from the state of Israel, from the rabbinate, chief rabbinate, and his mission was to find missing husbands. You know the concept of aguna, right? Aguna usually in our days is referring to a lady that was married to someone, they are currently divorced, and the husband refuses to give the get. This is called aguna. And some cases in the recent past were fixed and settled, and the get was delivered. Regretfully, there are more cases that they need a solution.
But Rabbi, in the war also.
What?
In the war, the husband was...
So I'm going to get there now. So the case of this rabbi was that he was sent with diplomatic passport, with full support of the United States government, to enter the jail system, to visit inmates, to go to places with escort, obviously, to find husbands that they left married wives in Israel. So after, I don't know how many weeks that he was traveling in the United States, he was able to settle 15 cases. Some husbands were in jail, some husbands assume a new identity and they remarry in America. Some husbands were buried already. So based on the circumstance, the buried husband, khalas, there's nothing you can do about it. But at least it gives closure. So because of the sensitivity of the cases, he needs to present each case with all the documentation, testimony, pictures, recording, documents to verify and to certify that whatever the Bedin is going now to release these 15 ladies is done between the parameters of Jewish law. So physical proof, it's mandatory. You cannot just call and say, okay, please liberate Mrs. Levi, Mrs. Cohen, Mrs. Mizrahi, Mrs. Levi. No, there's no such a thing. He needs to meet with the Dayanim, and he needs to bring each case by its own merit. So you can imagine the thickness of the dossier of 15 cases. Some of them, as I said before, cemetery documentation, death certificate, that's easy. And he was able to, in the case of the husbands that they were remarried or they were in jail in America, to secure the permission for a get to be issued. That permission is a written document that the husband signs in the presence of two witnesses, and he says, Kitvu utnu. Kitvu utnu, it's a Gemara term that means write and deliver the get on my behalf. So this rabbi comes to Miami, and I knew all this because he came here. He came here, 41st back then, and tells us the story on a Shabbat, what happened. After he finished, he says, you know what? He landed from Miami, I think, and the flight was a TWA flight. I'm not sure exactly, he was going to Canada first, and then to Europe and Israel, but bottom line, he had a flight scheduled that night, TWA flight. He landed early in the day from Miami to JFK, and he says, you know what, I have 6-7 hours before the flight. Let me go to Brooklyn, grab something to eat, do mincha gedolah in the synagogue, and then I go to the airport. That was the day that going to the airport a few minutes before flight, it was acceptable, permissible standards, using somebody else's ticket. You remember those days? Or using the stickers on the tickets. Things were manually done, a lot of things in the past. Anyways, to make a long story short, he orders a taxi 2 hours before the flight. Plenty of time. Bottom line, in the middle of the roadway to JFK. A tractor trailer flips. The entire Belt Parkway is shut down. You cannot move anywhere. You cannot take an exit. You cannot climb. You cannot take a detour. The way the trailer fell, it blocked basically the highway. Usually trailers are long. And even if the traffic was moving, it was a snail pace. Because now everybody needs to maneuver to one side of the highway and one car at a time, etc. So it was a big mess. By the time he cleared the Belt Parkway, he arrived to the airport before the flight left. But when he had run to the counter after security, the agent behind the counter says to him, "I'm sorry, sir, but the flight is closed. We paged you 3 times. He tells, "But look, police report says, I understand, but once the plane gate is locked, for that reason, we cannot book you on that flight. But what we can do is try to book you tomorrow night to a different flight, or perhaps we will endorse your ticket to take a different flight with a connection." He says, okay. He was a person that had great emunah and bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we know that one of the principles of emunah is the concept of ashgaha peratit. A person believes and understands that there is divine providence. We don't say mikre, we don't just say this actually just happened, but mikre is actually rak me'ashem. It says God is manipulating the situation. And he's sitting in the waiting area of the flight. He looks at the news, and what does he see? That flight that he was supposed to be on, God forbid, exploded mid-air when he took out from JFK. You remember?
Yes.
You remember Google search, TWA flight.
That finished TWA, that flight.
That was the final straw that finished regretfully TWA. But today TWA has a resurrection. They built a beautiful hotel in JFK Terminal 5, right?
Yes.
So that's the reminder of TWA. But I flew it several times, TWA. But bottom line, this is what the Gemara writes.
He was supposed to be on that flight.
He's supposed to be on. Now, think of the outcome. If God forbid, Haz v'shalom,
Wow.
he is on that flight, you know what happens? Forget about only the loss of life. That's already a tragedy. But all the files of 15 ladies that were agunot for years, unable to date, unable to go out with anyone, unable to even listen to a shidduch offer because they don't know if the husband alive or the husband is not. So there is such a thing, as we heard also yesterday, that, Borei Olam has, how do we say, his own heshbonot. But that's how the Gemara concludes to teach us that a person needs to understand. There are miracles. But to create or to do something extreme or suicidal in order to rely on a miracle is dangerous for the person's life. Why? Because miracles are not free. Miracles have a price. Now, what is the cost of a miracle? I don't have that answer. But every time that the miracle is performed to a person, the Gemara says, Shim osim lo nes, menakim lo mizechuyotav. Meaning to say, a withdrawal was made from our account of mitzvot. Okay, you need a miracle. What miracle do you need? Okay, that's going to cost you 100,000 mitzvot. If we will understand the value of mitzvot, we will not trade it in by saying, okay, you know what? take 100,000 mitzvot and do the miracle. Because first of all, we don't know if all of the mitzvot that we do are actually kept in our account. Many times the mitzvot go to another person, especially on the Lashon Hara protocol. And sometimes the mitzvot are not done good, are not done properly, or the person shows a certain disdain or disliking for the mitzvot, and that can also affect. But obviously, Hashem does miracles without any doubts, without any hesitations. Some miracles are obvious, some miracles are that nothing happened is a miracle. You understand the reverse psychology of it?
So what is the greatness of the mitzvah?
It's a great question, and wait till Perashah Ki Tetzeh, and we're going to discuss that mitzvah, because that is the time frame of the mitzvah. So this way it gives me enough time to do research. It's a hok, of course. It's a heavenly decree, like Para Aduma, like Kashrut, like Sha'atnes. All these, actually, I'll tell you short, that this mitzvah of Shiluach HaKen expedites Mashiach's arrival. That's what's written in the holy books. It says that when a Jew comes and sends away the mother bird is sent away. She comes back and she sees that the egg is gone. So one of the Midrashim says that this bird flies to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it says, God, look at your children. In order to fulfill your Torah, they took away my egg. So God says to the bird, you worry about an egg? What about my children that are in exile for 2,000 years? So it says that this mitzvah me'orer rachamei shamayim lehakriv biyat HaMashiach, or lekarev biyat HaMashiach. So Be'ezrat Hashem will do things between the normal rationale, not going to extremes, do it l'shem shamayim, and again, as the Gemara writes, don't rely on miracles. And just to conclude, that the actual meaning of the Gemara and the Torah, when it comes to reward and the consequence and goodness, etc., it's more on the spiritual and partially physical. But the bulk is on the spiritual.
Does it work with the chicken? Or just
Repeat that again?
Does it work with the chicken?
No.
No, it's not a problem.
That's
No,
that
has to
was part
be-
of the question.
Yes.
It does it work with the
כי
egg as
ייקרא
well?
כאן ציפור לפניך בדרך וכל עץ על הארץ, אפרוחים או ביצים. Has to do with the
Only the
dove.
bitzim.
No,
Dove, yeah, paloma in Spanish.
Only with the bitzim.
Yes. Okay, my good friends.
Azaku
Thank you,
Baruch.
Mr. Hillary. And Be'ezrat Hashem, may your son, Ike J. Ben Devora, find a good shidduch soon. Amen. ברוך אדוני לעולם. אמן ואמן. רבי חנניה בן הקשיא אומר, רצה הקדוש ברוך הוא לזכות את ישראל לפיכך. הרבה להם תורה מצוות שנאמר, אדוני חפש למען צדקו, יגדיל תורה ויטיל קדיש.